Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
I'm Bill Heron. I'm the writer on the latest edition of Shadows of Atlantis. I was responsible for converting the original Call of Cthulhu and Savage Worlds adventure into something that's more in keeping with the Achtung Cthulhu ethos. Um, Not just about punching Nazis and the like, but a whole two-fisted pulp journey across the world. I've been involved with Achtung Cthulhu probably since 2013. I wasn't one of the original writers on the project, but I have been involved with it on and off over the years. I was responsible for doing the 7th edition conversion on Call of Cthulhu, so you could say I know the subject matter fairly well.
Mm.
I was also involved in writing the two core rule books, the Player's Guide and the James Master's Guide. Quite a bit of the Nachtwolf weird science and stuff like that is you can probably blame it on me.
Mm.
I'm also involved in the forthcoming campaigns as well, the Forest of Fear, which hopefully will be out this year, and which is set in the Ardennes in the closing stages of the war. I've seen some of the artwork for that; it's impressive.
Mm.
And I'm also working on Serpent and Sands. I'm not a full-time writer. I'm a freelance writer for Modiphius, but I'm not. I work as an IT infrastructure guy the rest of the time. So the writing is very much a part-time thing for me. But yeah, so Shadows of Atlantis was a bit of an interesting project.
Yeah. So Shadow of Atlantis is a adventure source book, part of the Achtung Cthulhu line, and for Modiphius. I'm so glad I get to talk to you about this because Atlantis is one of my favorite subjects. It's something like in myth that keeps coming back, even today. Like Aquaman and the new Wakanda Forever movie, Atlantis has a big part in the mythology of those stories. So how did you become? How did Shadows of Atlantis happen? How did you become involved in it?
It would have been about a year ago when they were talking about converting some of the older campaigns. I didn't. Basically, the whole Shadows of Atlantis campaign was really written for Call of Cthulhu and Savage Worlds by Lynn Hardy, who did a fantastic job. I mean, it was an excellent campaign. But I was approached to convert it to the 2D20 system for Achtung Cthulhu, which is a little bit less, shall we say, Cthulhu-esque. I always think of Achtung Cthulhu. You get to pay back all those times you had a sanity loss.
Hmm.
You might, you don't just go bibbly when you see a deep one. In Achtung Cthulhu, you probably punch them or
Hmm.
headbutt them.
Hmm.
I call it mythos payback. All those times you've lost a character. Hang on, wait a minute. I'll be right back, and you come back with a bazooka. I know that some of the historical adherents to Call of Cthulhu, say, "Oh, this is really daft. It's too pulpy and things like that." But let's face it, you're dealing with Nazi sorcerers and alien entities in World War II. It's a bit of a stretch anyway.
Yes,
And
yes.
obviously, we've also got the weird science and everything like the super soldier. Um, I think it's quite safe to say the Achtung Cthulhu had blue crystal technology before a certain film introduced it. I think the Hydra is very much a mix of a Nightwolf and Black Sun, and Nightwolf, Black Sun. And, so it's just like, look at that. Wait a minute, you're watching Captain America or Indiana Jones. It's an easy step into the whole into the Achtung Cthulhu sort of the world.
Okay.
But yeah, so when I was asked to convert it, I thought, okay, I need to look at this a little bit more. And one of the first things I did was get out Indiana Jones
Mm.
because
Okay.
you're hunting for a world-shaking MacGuffin uh, like the super weapon that's mentioned in Shadows of Atlantis or the Ark of the Covenant. There's a good chance you're going to be traipsing across the world. And one of the things we did bring into this one was the concept of the roving red line. When you hear the Raiders march and you see the
Yes.
little so you go from destination to destination. We had a little bit like that. I can't remember from the. I think we got it in the book. I'll just check now. I don't think we got that. I'm not sure if we got the maps in the book or not. But there was a whole idea of the roving red line. No, we haven't. But the idea is it's going from here to here, so everybody can see it in their heads, just their minds. Uh, but that was one of the things I wanted to try and bring across the fact that you're jumping around. There's two significant changes to the original plot line that we made, or I made, which hopefully didn't change too much. One was a little bit more in the final section, which I'm not going to say too much about. The cover gives away quite a bit of it, which is, and there's also a certain section in South America that's been moved to Central America, which is just a bit more in keeping with jumping around the continents. It gives us a chance for our American colleagues to join in as well if they wanted to in the Secret War.
Oh, okay. So without spoiling too much, it sounds like the general premise is very Indiana Jones like, where everyone's trying to search for some key elements, or maybe the Atlantis in some way.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's one of the things we also wanted to try and get a bit more, so it's actually to show folk how to use the Achtung Cthulhu 2D20 system. There's some basic sort of concepts in there. We call that basic training. So that's in like the sidebars, if I'm through that. Hopefully I've done it in such a way that you've still got some of the horror aspects of it in there, as well as a bit more of the kind of a two-fisted, right, I could do this all day sort of like one of the things about Achtung Cthulhu is, of course, we have the spellcasters, which you don't tend to have in Call of Cthulhu or similar ones, which some Mythos purists may hate. On the other hand, it gives a chance. Well, I can use runic traditions or other shamanic traditions. There's a few more in the pipeline for that, but that's a project that's coming further down the line. But it does give a chance to actually use things like Hammer of Thor and things like that, as a mystic spell.
Okay.
There's a few pictures in the book that actually show some of these spells in use. There's a very good picture where one of the guys using such, I think it's spellcaster, she's using like a shield spell. It's like a sort of globe to protect her from the individuals that are attacking her and the team. So there's a little bit more of that in there. Essentially, it's a what if concept. It's not so much the fact that we're relying on the mythos being influential of the Nazis. We've always been quite of a one mind about that. But basically, the mythos has been co-opted by the Nazis, not the other way around. And of course, you've got individuals that are involved in that are walking both sides. Some of them are very old individuals that have been walking both sides for a long time. And there is at least one NPC that I hope to see will make another appearance later on, I hope. I won't spoil with which ones, but let's just say he's had a fairly full and varied life, and was once a pirate.
So this is an 8-mission campaign. And I see you have handouts and some other story seed ideas to help link everything together. Do you have any other? Is there any other like tools for Game Master that they could use to set up this?
Not at the moment. One of the things I would do is try and it's the kind of thing that where a GM needs to sit down with his players and also have a session 0 beforehand. And because it is a horror game, I would certainly have an X card on the table, or the Veils and Lines, which I discussed briefly in the book. With an X card, obviously, if someone's feeling uncomfortable about the situation, I mean, we are talking about World War II. There's possible PTSD issues with that, and we're not really glossing over the fact that the Nazis were horrible, horrible human beings that did ethnic cleansing and all other options like that. And there is an opportunity for GMs to talk that through with their players initially and just say, well, look, if you guys aren't happy about that, just taps the X card, or there any subjects you want to just stay away from. So that's one of the things I've definitely have is have that session 0, have an X card on the table. It is World War II. There are some horrific stories you hear about World War II on both sides, I should point out, both Allies and Axis. And obviously there are some trigger moments that could happen with that. Hopefully, this is one of the things like this. There is a mention of cannibalism, for example, and some people just freak out about that, which for obvious reasons. Other tools, I don't think I mentioned it in the actual text. What I would do is best way to approach these missions is that they are self-contained missions, just like the missions we have separately. So you could essentially split the missions between Egypt, France, and Persia. You could actually run those as separate missions and have individual missions in between them. And the idea is it's a closed loop. You go to Egypt, you get what you do what you came for, and you get out again. You might have some intelligence from that, but because it's Achtung Cthulhu, you don't have to spend all the time in the library trying to research all this stuff. Section M has resources to do that. They have occult boffins, they have spellcasters. It's a bit more evident in the Mission 8, the last one, where you can actually start to draw on these resources, where you start seeing some of it's all coming together. Of course, it's not much use when you get to the situation like you see on the front cover.
Oh, excellent. So, if I may ask, I'm curious. What are your thoughts about the Atlantis mythology in general? Why is it that we keep coming back to it? I mean, it's interesting how every few years suddenly it comes back in pop culture.
Yeah, I think it's still that kind of lost civilization. It's that lost what if. We don't know. Everything that we base our history on is probably about 4,000 years, give or take. With the Egyptians, I for one, am constantly amazed just what the Egyptians were doing 3,000 years BC. And your mind kind of staggers back from that. I mean, when you think what humanity's achieved in 1,000 years, we're going back to Dark Ages. 2,000 years, we're going back to the Romans. 3,000 years beyond that, and your mind just kind of staggers back. And Atlantis, I think, is one of those things where we don't know anything about it. There's rumors that it was in the Mediterranean. There's rumors that it's really Call of Cthulhu. There's all these concepts, and it's kind of like that whole lost civilization. It's like someone saw these submerged statues and they're thinking, where did those come from? And of course, there's the whole aliens thing and the what if, and the whole thing for a civilization that's supposed to be very advanced that practically disappeared overnight from history. I think it's just that whole attraction of the unknown. It's a civilization we don't know anything about. It disappeared. To a lesser extent, you see it I suppose, in America, there's the Anasazi Indians, isn't there? The Native Americans. And there's also the Croatan incident. Have I said that? Croatan? Is that
Croatoan? You're close. I'm pretty sure you're close enough. That's not it.
I know there was a civilization disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
They just up sticks and left. But yeah, it's just that whole search for the unknown, I think. And as Indy would say, it's fortune and glory, kid, fortune and glory. Person that finds Atlantis. But yeah, I mean, it's a whole load of things. You think even now things like Stargate Atlantis is still that. What if there was a civilization here that predated humanity, or was humanity's not necessarily creator, but the impetus for things like the Greeks and the Romans, maybe even the Egyptians? I think it's just it's that lost fragment, and it's the unknown that attracts us so much about that. And there's just so much that pop culture is made out. Like you said, Namor, Aquaman. Everyone believes it's in the sea, and it just or a sea somewhere. I think even our favorite old racist Lovecraft himself probably had his own theories about that as well. I think I think really it was probably his version of Atlantis. Something was here before time, before humans came out of the ocean. But who's not to say that they're the ones that made us come out of the ocean in the first place? The Elder Things are another example. Although in this case, with the Elder Things, their cities are, shall we say, a little bit more scattered around. There is going to be a more detailed explosion. Not explosion. Well, that comes later usually when Achtung Cthulhu's involved. There'll be a bit more of an exploration of a Elder Things city that was once on an ocean floor in Forest of Fear. Those of you that played the Achtung Cthulhu Tactics game will have just scratched the surface of that a little bit. but yeah, there's the attraction of the unknown. I think that no one knows where it came from. It's that unknown missing city. It's the mystery, I think.
Yeah, and we do love our mysteries. So let's talk about the art. So one thing this book really drew me in as I was flipping through it digitally was the art is amazing. Like one of the first images, it's like this hyper powered centurion fighting this Atlantean maybe sorcerer or soldier. I'll put images real fast up and so our viewers can see what I'm talking about. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
How much input did you have when it came to the art direction in this book?
I'm not the art director, but I did make a couple of suggestions when I was going through it. And what I try and do is I try and write some of the stuff there that fires up. I describe some of the scenes. I didn't do the art direction, so to their credit, they did a cracking job. But the original art was done by a chap named Dim Martin, and it was very much evocative of the Achtung Cthulhu game at that point in time. But the new art, he's not an ancient Greek soldier. He's a little bit older than that.
Mm,
But yes, I know the one you mean. The sorcerer what probably was Atlantis. If you look in the background, you can actually see a little bit more what's going on in that scene. But yeah,
yeah, it's
uh,
very well done. Very well done.
it is amazing. It's the artist is amazing. Just artists in plural. I think in this case, I think I'm just going to check now. The inside cover has got a fantastic picture of that.
Mm.
Those two fighting, and also, okay, so yeah, the artwork is yes, 1, 2, 3. There's a whole number of folk that did it, and they did an awesome job. It all looks in keeping with each of the other ones as well. So I love the artwork.
Yeah, it's
And
very action packed. Was there like was there anything particular did you tell the artist like, hey, make sure you have this in there so that they can game masters in place can see what I'm talking about. Was there anything like that? Any discussion
I
like that?
think, but that's really a job for the cartographers. I'd like to when I'm doing my writing, and also when I wrote this, I had a very much an idea of what Atlantis was going to look like, what the peoples were looking like, and you can see some of that translated there. But I
Mm,
like giving enough, not going to say ammunition, but I need enough mental fuel for artists to say, I want to do this. I can do this. I want to feature this part here. And I want to try and give enough sort of key scenes and epic scenes, like the one on the cover. That's really
mm,
written out of a scene that wasn't in the original one. It's just a couple of paragraphs in the original. Atlantis basically 2 pages in the original campaign, I think.
mm.
This is much more. You can show a little bit more what's actually going on. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, okay. Does this book have any player options? Something, anything new for players to use, either new backgrounds or anything like that?
there are some pre-generated characters that they were created specifically for us. When I wrote it, there weren't any pre-generated characters, so they were added
Hmm.
by later on. Yeah,
If I was running this and asked you either to pick a pre-generated character or make your own character, what character would you bring to this?
I think that's really down to. I would I would go with what your group wants to play as a GM. Now, one of the things that they're not random. They're not random stats. So you could have a group that's basically wanting to just do a bit of exploration. They're a bit more cerebral. They want to think their way through problems. Or then you've got the ones that want to go in all guns blazing and want to blow stuff up. Unfortunately, most groups usually tend to use both, which tends to. We want to blow stuff up, but do you know how to blow stuff up? Okay, fine. Yeah, we'll do it this way. Yeah.
Hmm.
There's usually at least half the tables going. So
Well,
I would basically I would use the pre-gems by all means, but I would thoroughly recommend that GMs using the session zero to create the characters with their players.
hmm.
I often find you can create like connections with other characters as well. I'm about to start working on a couple of pre-generated characters of my own, and they're two sisters, the twin sisters. and they've both been recruited by Section M. One for very different reasons than the other, and because they're identical twins, I won't spoil it. I won't spoil it.
Oh, excellent. Is there anything about this that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
Aside from the artwork and things like that, it's very much this is the first campaign. It's very much at the start of the war, so you have a little bit more freedom to travel around. There's not so much the fact you're not going to be jumping into war zones. It might be a war zone by the time your characters leave, but there's very much more, a bit more thinking about investigation, less of the fact big guns, although guns are involved to a certain extent. I would say that if you're a Call of Cthulhu fan, it's a refreshing change to what is going slightly mad in a uncaring universe. There's a chance of payback. I think that's one of the things that GMs often, when they make the transition from Achtung Cthulhu or Call of Cthulhu or something similar, there's the fact that yes, it's almost adversarial. That the GM is like this uncaring entity that is solely going to send his players mad. Or is it, sorry, player characters mad? But I think this. I think the Achtung Cthulhu campaigns, they're written very much more the high adventure, pulpy style that I think a lot of the more modern campaigns are sort of missing these days. It's not Master Nyarlathotep. It's not a huge. You don't going to have a huge amount of historical information here. On the other hand, you do have enough to get you go by. And if you want to go and do research, by all means, there's little indicators there. So go and look up the stuff. For example, some of the stuff in Central America, I did a bit of research looking at places like what would be a good place to actually transfer from Peru to British Honduras, for example. So I had to go and look up things like the local ruins and things like that. And there's no reason why a GM couldn't do a little bit more than that. Shadows of Atlantis is smaller than the original campaign because a lot of the historical sort of data is freely available elsewhere if a GM wants to look. And to be honest, we were trying to cram everything in as much as we can. There's a lot going on in Shadows of Atlantis, especially in the last chapter. And there's a lot going on. There's lots of bits and pieces. Some of the sources we kept from the original because they can translate going forward. It really is the first campaign. There are going to be other ones set in the middle of the war. The forthcoming Serpent in the Sands is going to be set during the Great Africa campaign, North Africa campaign, which will involve tanks to a certain extent. And of course the deadly 88s, the terrifying weapon that so versatile in the Second World War, useful against the Russian T-34 tanks. They were terrifying weapons that basically they're anti-aircraft guns that just tore through tanks like paper. And then you've got things like the Tiger tanks. You've got we've actually gone one upped them in the Forest of Fear. I don't know if those of you that are familiar with the original Creatures of the Secret War book might remember there's a certain sequence about Shoggoth war machines. And one of the things that Forest of Fear involves is one of those. And in fact, mass produced ones of those. So the Forest of Fear is probably going to be the next one up after Shadows of Atlantis, and that's more probably closer to it's set during the Battle of the Bulge, and it's very much more of a kind of you guys the agents are transplanted to the Ardennes, the Belgian border, in the Forest of Fear. The name of the title relates to the actual forest itself, the forest of the Ardennes. It was fascinating researching that. For example, I learned that a lot of the Allies there was plenty of wild boar in the forest, but the Allies had absolutely no interest in eating wild boar. and we'll read up a little bit more, is because they've seen them eating corpses.
Hmm.
So, so they've seen wild boar snapping on the corpses of, and that's probably enough to make it. Yeah, there's things like the Hoodkin Forest in the north
Hmm.
of the Ardennes. They still can't use that for commercial forestry because of the shrapnel that's embedded in the trees. This is 70 years later,
Wow.
no, 80 years later. So yeah, it was a fascinating little journey through that. And of course, Shadows of Atlantis is the same. It's the first. I went through a lot of the stuff, the historical stuff of the regions, uh, just to try and make sure I wasn't doing anything wrong. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's very much a kind of a. It's very filmic in the way we do it now. The idea is we set them up as scenes, as acts and scenes, and the missions and things like that. So that, with the momentum and threat mechanics, obviously it allows you to do a lot more cinematic things than just rolling dice. And there are plenty of opportunities for famous last stands, or
Oh.
as I occasionally an occasional what I call a white vest moment.
Hmm.
Uh, White vest moments are when the hero's been beaten up, he's been beaten down, uh, and then there's that bit where he just gets up, bleeding, they're bleeding, they're sort
Hmm.
of covered and stuff, and they pick up their gun and flamethrower,
Hmm.
and they just wade back in. Uh, Basically based on Ellen Ripley, and she's grubby, she's sweaty, she's had enough, but she goes
Hmm.
back in there, uh, and Bruce Willis, of course, in the Die Hard movies, the white vest moment is when the hero just, I just got one last thing to say.
Well, awesome. Well, Shadows of Atlantis, it's the PDF is out now, and I think the physical copy should be out very shortly.
It is. It's,
Um,
in the UK where I am. It's already out, and pre-orders already started getting this. It should be out, I think, in this month, this coming month in the US.
okay.
But obviously the PDFs are available, and because it's Modiphius, if you buy the hard copy or pre-order the hard copy, you'll get the PDF included in that.
I love that.
Um,
I love that when they that option.
yeah,
Excellent.
it's
Okay. I'm sorry.
gone.
Oh no, no. I was gonna say that I wish more companies would follow that model. Thank you, Bill, so much for taking the time to talk to us about Shadows of Atlantis. Again, it's on a PDF, and the physical copies are coming soon to at least to American stores very soon.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, to everyone out there, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. We'll see you soon. Have a great day, everyone.